I feel like I speak for everyone when I say that dystopian future movies are awesome. Presenting a science fiction world that seems familiar but just out of reach, mixing futurism and usually with a dose of political commentary, giant neon buildings, flying cars, giant capitalist hellscapes where corporations have taken over the world. When bringing up dystopian future movies, I feel like one's mind will immediately go in a few different places. You've got your Blade Runner, of course, the pinnacle of the entire genre, and Blade Runner 2049, which, dare I say it, is even better. There's The Matrix, V for Vendetta, 1984, Terry Gilliam's Brazil for the really cool people, and I know Equilibrium is a big guilty pleasure for a lot of people. But there is another one, just as good as the best the genre has to offer. A frighteningly politically relevant neo-noir thriller with brilliant science fiction concepts, and it's also the greatest New Year's film of all time. 1995's Strange Days. Strange Days was directed by Kathryn Bigelow and was written by none other than James Cameron. It's set in 1999 on the last 2 days of the year, right before the turn of the century, and follows former cop turned street hustler Nero, played by Ralph Fiennes, as him and his friend Lynette get entangled in a massive criminal conspiracy involving Nero's ex-girlfriend and the murder of a prostitute. In a perfect world, I truly believe this film should be talked about in the same light as The Matrix and even the original Blade Runner, but for whatever reason, it just did not get its due. Made on a budget of $42 million, it made a whopping $8 million at the box office domestically, as well as a mixed reception critically. A catastrophic flop that almost ended Kathryn Bigelow's career. And in later years, while it certainly achieved a cult classic status in some circles, it really didn't get its pop culture due, which is a fucking travesty. Strange Days presents a world so close and so similar to our own nowadays that aside from a few very futurist concepts, it's hardly even science fiction anymore. Los Angeles 1999 is a place completely tearing itself apart socially, politically, racially. It's essentially become a war zone. The entire LAPD is made up of nothing but power-hungry fascists who are over-militarized to an almost cartoonish extent, that go around inciting violence amongst protesters, perpetrating an endless cycle of violence and tensions, which is totally science fiction and not just our reality. Crime rates are at an all-time high. A rapper named Jericho One, who was the primary voice of the underrepresented people of LA, speaking out against oppression and tyranny, basically a Malcolm X or Fred Hampton stand-in, has just been murdered and nobody knows who did it. And on top of all that, it's the turn of the century, New Year's Eve, and all the unease and anxiety that comes from the beginning of a whole new year. It's chaos, to say the least. The 90s ushered in an insane amount of political disruption and conflicts. Along with the ongoing war on drugs, there was the Lauren Bobbitt incident, showing how the media can eventicize a situation to the point of turning the people involved into celebrities. Later on, there were the 1992 Los Angeles riots after the beating of Rodney King, this of which being the main source of inspiration for Strange Days' story. You had the O.J. Simpson trial, the popularization of grunge music, the Bill Clinton scandal, you had Y2K. There's a lot of things going on, and Strange Days feels like the angry, jumbled collage of all these different aspects in the world crammed into one dystopian future movie. From a visual standpoint, Strange Days is nothing more than a 90s grunge, Y2K explosion of style and personality. It's an absolute stunner visually. The colors, the costumes, the set design, everything drips with such an awesome, unique 90s visual style. It feels loud and punchy. The whole final act at the New Year's party is a masterfully staged visual spectacle. The Y2K aesthetic is played up to the max, contrasting the more standard dystopian future set dressing. The costumes are vibrant, the 90s vibes are immaculate, and it boosts the most perfect Y2K 90s grunge soundtrack to match. Watching Strange Days is like stepping into a world out of any sense of time or place. Not sure where it lies as a film from 1995 set in 1999 on New Year's when it's about to become 2000. And it just works. There's simply nothing else like it. The film also features many first-person sequences which look incredible. They actually designed and built a lightweight handheld 35mm film camera exclusively for these scenes, so they feel like someone really just strapped a GoPro onto their head. And each of these scenes are a marvel to view. The opening Chinese restaurant robbery is so immersive. it explodes with such a hyperactive and intense energy to it. And these scenes move from action-packed to slower and intimate to disgustingly horrific and pulse-poundingly intense. They perfectly encapsulate the feeling of injecting yourself directly into one's memories, reliving part of one's personal history, which is the main recurring theme of the film. In the world of strange days, these things called squids exist. They're illegal devices that attach to one's head, allowing the wearer to directly record memories as well as the physical sensations they felt during that memory. These are then stored onto a disc and can be replayed, allowing the viewer to see and feel everything that was recorded. And our lead, Nero, deals with these devices, being a peddler for memories, selling, say, the memory of a bank robbery or the memory of someone falling in love, allowing buyers to completely live in these moments.
Okay, this is not like TV, only better. This is life. It's a piece of somebody's life. It's pure and uncut. It's straight from the cerebral cortex. I mean, you're there, you're doing it, you're seeing it, you're hearing it, you're feeling it.
And the trivialization of memory boiling down to what is essentially the core thing that makes us human into something that can be commercialized and profited off is the big moral dilemma of the film. And it's a fascinating dilemma. If you had the ability to completely relive a previous memory, any memory over and over again, would you? Or do you believe a memory should stay a memory because if you really had the ability to do so, you'd risk getting lost in it? Who'd want to continue facing the harsh realities of our present day when you could just open up and continuously relive through happier times, or live vicariously through someone else's memory, to avoid moving forward with your life and instead choosing to stay in the past, where things are safer, more nostalgic, and familiar? I mean, that's the same reason Hollywood keeps putting out endless sequels and reboots to older franchises instead of creating new ideas. Nostalgia sells. And this dilemma is exactly what Nero has gotten himself caught in. While he does play it off for the most part as a suave, charismatic businessman, he is hopelessly addicted to reliving his past memories, particularly those when he was at his happiest, when he was with his ex-girlfriend, Faith, refusing to move on from this relationship, causing him to have this unhealthy obsession with her after they reconnect, completely unable to move on with his life because of how much time he spends reliving this time with her, and ignoring the present. And he sells people on this idea basically as if it were a drug, because it's such a universal concept, the longing to physically step back into your memories and relive them as if they were the present. It's easy to get lost in memory playback, as they call it, getting addicted to it. If you can experience any and all situations a person can go through by playing different memories, it can be easily addictive, and easy to lose yourself in all the different options possible.
What kind of things, exactly?
Exactly anything. It's whatever you want, whoever you want to be, okay? I mean, if you want to go skiing without leaving your den, you can, but I'm assuming that a guy like you want to go skiing, you fly to Aspen. That's not what you're interested in here. It's about the stuff that you can't have, right? The forbidden fruit, Like running into a liquor store with a .357 Magnum in your hand, feeling the adrenaline pumping through your veins, huh? Or, you see that guy over there with the drop-dead Filipino girlfriend? Wouldn't you let it be that guy for 20 minutes? The right 20 minutes?
Some even being so intense and extreme it causes psychological damage. And on the other hand, you have Nero's closest friend, Lornette, who is strictly against everything Nero stands for when it comes to memory manipulation. She believes living in the present is the only way to live, and it's dangerous to do otherwise. No matter what, you're always going to be forced to live in the present one way or another. You can keep replaying nostalgic memories over and over again, but nostalgia only comes from knowing you can't relive a memory. You can fondly look back at better times and better events in the past, but what gives those better times and events that feeling of nostalgia is that melancholy, knowing that it's in the past and will never be re-experienced again. And this is what allows humans to keep moving on, to keep on living and creating new memories and moving forward with their lives.
I don't know, but she does it now. These are used emotions. It's time to trade them in. Memories were meant to fade, Lenny. They're designed that way for a reason.
The existentialist idea of memories and how humans interact with them is fully explored here. And what's doubly fascinating is how it sets all this within the backdrop of intense political and social commentary, specifically surrounding that of America's policing systems. This is one of the most politically charged, big-budget Hollywood outings I've ever seen. It directly depicts the LAPD as this intensely oppressive, tyrannical, fascist horror that lingers over the city. Much inspiration was taken from the ongoing war on drugs, which most heavily affected bigger urban cities such as Los Angeles, overfunding and over-militarizing the police and giving them near unchecked power to do whatever they deemed necessary to try and fix a so-called problem that was entirely caused by the US government itself. And so this aspect of the story is played up, and the police serve as the main antagonistic force of the movie. The central conflict of the film revolves around the murder of rapper and activist Jericho 1. It's presented as a mystery at first, but it's revealed later that he was murdered in cold blood, execution style, by two LAPD officers. But unbeknownst to them, one of the people with Jericho 1 at the time was recording the incident on one of those memory recording devices, causing the two cops to go on a warpath throughout LA, trying to track down and kill Nero and Lornette, who are in possession of the video. Lornette immediately wants to make the video public, exposing the fact it was the LAPD who killed Jericho 1. But Nero is hesitant, knowing that if it comes out, it'll launch a full-scale war between the citizens and the police, pushing Los Angeles past its breaking point with the riots and chaos that would ensue.
Fine. You want blood running waist deep in the storm drains, then go do it. 200,000 gangbangers will spread like a wave through this city and burn it to the fucking ground, Mace. And as soon as the fire starts, the street cops will start capping off at anything that moves. It'll be an all-out war, and you know it.
I don't think so.
Well, maybe it's time for a war.
Well, you really want that on your head, Mace? Huh?
Another really profound moral dilemma that the film presents is choosing to take either Nero or Lornette's side. Would you release the video of Jericho 1's murder to the public, solving the mystery and exposing the evil within the LAPD, or would you not, in an attempt to avoid the eventual chaos, war, and death that would undoubtedly follow? And while in the film a compromise between the two is found, resulting in a mostly peaceful resolution, in reality, it would be much more complicated. It's legitimately insane how relevant this film still is. It's a very essential aspect to the story that the murder of Jericho 1 was recorded, and the conflict of the film revolves around the video. This, of course, being directly inspired by the beating of Rodney King, where 4 LAPD officers were recorded using excessive force on King, sparking mass riots, civil unrest, and political disruption after the cops were acquitted of their crime. And the real tragedy of the situation is that this is far from an isolated incident. We've seen this idea of recordings and videos being the only thing that leads to change reflected many times in recent memory, the biggest being the murder of George Floyd. If Floyd's murder was never recorded and made public, 100% nothing would have become of his death, and Derek Chauvin would never have received any consequences for his actions. There never would have been worldwide media attention on the situation, and the idea of police brutality and abuse of power wouldn't have been called back into question as much as it was. And we saw it again at the beginning of 2023 with the murder of Tyree Nichols, in which 5 police officers beat Nichols to death during a traffic stop. The officers were only busted because the incident was recorded on their body cams. I could go on and on and on, but you get the point. And while it seems that this is just an endless cycle of violence stemming from an entire system that promotes abuse of power and instills a shoot first, ask questions later mentality to undertrained, poorly educated officers, which, I mean, it is, Strange Days makes the point that in order to overcome this oppression and make real change in the system, you need video and you need recordings. You need these wrongdoings to come to light, and you need riots and revolution. Strange Days, a big-budget studio film that came from Hollywood, argues that sometimes violence is the answer. Sometimes people need to fight back in order to instill change. Instead of going for some weak, lame-o, centrist, why can't we all live in peace and harmony fantasy ending. I mean, the climax of the film is literally a crowd of regular civilians fighting off a dozen police officers who are beating Lornette in a way that directly resembles Rodney King's beating. It's fucking great. The world of Strange Days is a world on fire. It's been ripped apart by political strife, murder, death, addiction, crime. The city is tearing itself apart, but if you can believe it, it is a deeply optimistic film at the end of the day. The film really truly gets to the heart of what New Year's as a holiday is all about. putting past all the bad and all the bullshit and all the negatives of the last year and completely starting anew on January 1st. As someone on the radio states at the beginning of the film,
So Dan, you looking forward to the new year?
Not really. I mean, what's the point? Nothing changes New Year's Day. The economy sucks. Gas is over $3 a gallon. 5th grade kids are shooting each other at recess. The whole thing sucks, right? What the hell are we celebrating?
there is no point to New Year's because ultimately nothing changes. As we see with its themes of police violence and racial tensions, New Year's changes nothing. On January 1st, we're all stuck in the same place and positions we were on December 30th. But the end of Strange Days at least leaves it hopeful enough. It gives you enough to grab onto and leaves you with enough of a feeling that everything will be okay. At the end, Nero finally gives up his obsession with Faith and he gets together with Lornette, forgetting about his past and instead choosing to finally live in the present. The two cops who killed Jericho 1 get iced. Their deaths and the eventual publication of the video may finally bring about change and reform in the LAPD. Will this change actually take place? Will Nero actually give up memory playback for good? Who knows? But it's the start of a brand new year, so anything's possible. And all that is why I believe Strange Days is the greatest New Year's film of all time. Happy New Year's, everyone, and thank you for watching.